Hi guys, and welcome back to Hairdry Treatment. Ladies in Red are back today with a big twist, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Phil Brown. Phil, I want to say a massive thank you for joining us firstly. And tell us a bit about obviously Beyond the Pitch and what you do on your channel and the podcast as well, because I'm sure our viewers would be really interested to hear that.
Yes, thank you, ladies, for having me. I've had my own podcast now for like 10 years, and lucky enough to be able to get a lot of different people on that podcast. Obviously, some who are players for United, ex-players, lots of different people that are relevant. I've been lucky enough to get really, really good guests. I've actually had Nicole on. And it's just something that I love to do, just like you. It's an outlet for your love of Manchester United. I speak to a lot of other people outside of football, outside of Manchester United, and I've been blown away by how successful it's been. I never expected to be that, but it's great. Yeah, I love doing it.
Amazing. And obviously you mentioned some of the guests you've had on there. You've had our lovely Nicole on there.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a bit about, obviously you've had Nicole on there. Women in football, do you see what we see, that gradually we are growing, women are getting more involved in it, and it seems to be not only players but also in terms of the media side of things. People are taking notice of women now, aren't they?
Well, look, it's all overdue. I think there's some men out there a little bit intimidated by that. I don't understand that, truthfully. I've got two girls myself. I want them to have the same ability to do what men do, and I think it's great. I think it's the biggest untapped resource in football. Men's saturated, so why not have you see in UFC, you see in women's boxing, you see how successful that is. So why not in football? And I think it's great to see that women are given much more of a voice now. They're given much more respect than what they should be. And there's a lot of arrogant lads out there who think they know more than what they do, and they're quite condescending. So I think it's disappointing. But women have had, if you only need to look at a woman's timeline, anytime they tweet anything, it's filled with disgraceful abuse. And some lads need to catch themselves on, because most of them are talking shit themselves, and it's really, really disappointing to see some of the stuff that women have to put up with. And I worry about it myself and my own two girls whenever they get on social media and what will happen to them. But thankfully, girls like yourselves are doing what you're doing, so it's making it easier for that generation that comes behind, that they won't maybe have to put up with this. So I think it's great that we see more and more women getting on football panels, doing podcasts and doing stuff like this.
Appreciate that, Phil. Thank you. And I'm glad you don't feel intimidated and you're happy to join us on Ladies in Red, because that's what it's all about. Thank you. Appreciate it. But we've got quite a lot of questions to get through, girls. Nicole, I know there was something you wanted to ask Phil towards the end, and we'll save that one a little bit. But first, we're going to stay on topic, and I want to talk about a massive topic going around right now. Obviously, Jadon Sancho, he's just played for England. I thought in the first half, to be fair, I thought he looked the main threat. He looked sharp, and it kind of fizzled out. But in terms of Sancho, we've discussed it for weeks now, and we're still saying we don't feel too confident. But Phil, do you have hope in this deal still getting over the line?
Well, look, there's a couple of different pieces of information out there that are conflicting. Fabrizio Romano was saying that agent fees are not a problem, but Fabrizio's getting that direct from the agent himself, and I'm being told completely the opposite. I'm being told that the agent fee is the biggest impediment to this deal happening, and that until that gets agreed, then there can't be any progress. So Jadon Sancho really needs to ask himself if he really wants to move to Manchester United. If he does, then he won't let his agent scupper the deal, and it'll happen. So it's really the ball's in his court. I've been a big critic of United not spending, but I think in this case, this is something that United need to learn from the Sanchez situation, where it can't just be about money. Money can't be the sole motivating factor. Jadon Sancho wants to come to one of the biggest football clubs in the world and forward his career. He's not going to let somebody else stop him advancing in his own profession so somebody else can advance in theirs. Jadon Sancho is responsible for what the agent's done. We talk about Mino Raiola. Mino Raiola gets criticised quite a bit for some of his demands, but from what I'm being told, and Sancho's agent, the demands are incredible. And so it really all depends on whether if Sancho really wants to move, then I think it'll happen. But in terms of whether personal terms will be agreed, it's a question of who you believe. Do you believe Sancho's agent, or do you believe the other parties involved in this?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Nicole, but obviously we've spoken a lot about Sancho, like we say, obviously there's still a lot of time left in this transfer window to get a deal done. Ideally, you want it done sooner rather than later, so he can actually have some time with the squad and obviously work his way in. But do you think that should happen? Do you think Jadon needs to be a bit more vocal about this?
Who's he? Someone else do it. Yeah, because it's just draining. You know what I love? I just love when someone just straight away just diminishes it. It's like, no, not true. And I know you can't have it. I know it's a big money deal, but it would save me a lot of stress and it would help my mental health immensely. Like I could get over it if he wasn't coming and buzz if he was coming. Do you know what I mean? But at the point I'm at now, I'm just like, it is what it is. If it happens, it happens. But I'm not holding my breath because I'll probably die. So that won't be good news.
Definitely don't hold your breath, no. I mean, I know Meg at the minute is in and out because she's got the kids behind her, bless her. Thumbs up or thumbs down, Meg? Sancho, do you think it's going to happen?
I am still slightly confident. I apologise because my kids are absolutely running wild behind me at the moment. But
I have four, don't apologise.
I'm still confident that I believe that in my head, the best scenario that right now is that Manchester United didn't want to overpay and didn't want to be forced to pay or overpay. So we've gone for the route of we've kind of got that deal with Van der Beek over the line, sealed, done straight away. And then, see what I mean, my children are just I think that we got Van der Beek and didn't have to overpay. It was straight through, very simple. And I just feel like with the Jadon Sancho one, we were waiting out to make sure that we weren't showing signs of overpaying for anybody else, and Dortmund want us to overpay for him. I still think it's a little bit too high. I think he's worthwhile in terms of what he can produce for the length of time as well. But I just think perhaps we wanted to show that we can do a deal without overpaying.
Yeah, so obviously try and get him to force his way a little bit, and if Dortmund know that he wants out, then obviously that could speed up the process. But she mentioned Van der Beek there. Obviously that deal, Saturday night we heard rumours and it escalated really quickly from that. I mean, Phil, Van der Beek, me and Meg did a bit of analysis the other day saying where do we think he'll fit in. I mean, where do you see this Van der Beek signing? How do you see that working? Do you think he'll be a sub? Do you think it'll be for rotation? Or can you see him starting?
It's going to be really interesting. I had Franz Hook on my podcast, who, of course, was United coach, Ajax coach, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, so he knows him really well. He had him at the Dutch national team as well. And I was asking him this question, how would he fit in? And I think what United are probably going to look to do is play Pogba in a deeper role. I'm not certainly convinced that that's the right thing to do. We saw against Southampton, for example, when he played in that role where he gave the ball away early, conceded a goal. When Mourinho played him there against Spurs, United conceded a goal after the first 35 seconds away from home. He's not great at tracking runners, but that defensive midfield role has changed quite a bit now, where it's not so much about tracking runners, it's about connecting the ball from playing out from the back to the midfield to the attack, which United have a problem with. So I think in that midfield three, he fits. But it's going to be really interesting because I think they've tried to play Fred in that role where he's been a ball-playing defensive midfielder. And I think that is probably what Solskjær is looking at. Van der Beek, Ajax captain, 10 caps for Holland. He's not coming to United to sit on the bench. And, just to quickly add something on to the Sancho thing, add-ons are really, really important when it comes to young players because you're signing potential and you just don't know if they're ever going to realise that potential. So we've seen with Pogba where there wasn't add-ons. It was a £90 million upfront fee, which is basically paying for the player that Pogba was going to become and never quite became that player. So with Sancho, you don't know if he's going to fulfill that potential. Kai Havertz has got add-ons too. You don't know if he's going to fulfill that potential. So those add-ons are really, really important. And if they do fulfill it, you pay. If they don't, then you don't. So that's really, really important. Van der Beek is 35 million plus add-ons, which is just an incredible deal when you consider United were being quoted 40 million for David Brooks, who missed most of the season with injury and got relegated with Bournemouth. And you look at what they paid for Fred, you look at what clubs have played for other midfielders, 45. Look what Liverpool paid for Naby Keita. It's an unbelievable deal, and it's really, I think it's an illustration of how United scouting has improved and recruitment's improved because United are now sending players to fit and play a certain system rather than players that are good and then they come into the club and then they look poor after 4 or 5 weeks because they don't suit the system they were signed for. They go somewhere else, they improve because they were signed by a club to fit a certain system that gets the best out of them. So it's definitely encouraging.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, on the Pogba point, me and Meg discussed this the other night as well. You mentioned the Southampton game. You've seen it often where Pogba, yes, technically we know how good of a player he is, but you don't want a player taking those kind of risks just in front of your back four. Yeah. Where obviously we've seen he can give the ball away and it does come back to haunt you. Nicole, what's your thoughts on that? Could you see Pogba being developed and being the right guy in that CDM role? I mean, we mentioned Fred. We said after a run of games, I think Fred really improved, but I still think he gives the ball away far too often, and it's a bit erratic to have. Like I say, Matic is stable there, isn't he? Can Pogba do that role?
Yeah. Ideally, you want Matic, or you want a replacement for Matic, because he's brilliant technically, but obviously he's on limited time. So no, it's not his best. It's not his best position, obviously. And I think long term, Ole does need to look for a replacement there. And can I just say on Van de Beek, who I've been calling Van de Beek for God knows how long, so thanks for rectifying that. The other day it was being bashed about that he was a panic buy. I've never heard so much nonsense in my life. What do you think about that, Phil?
I know one or two things about a panic buy on the weekends, a few performance enhancers and stuff like that, but I don't Van de Beek, I don't think so. I think it's absolute opposite. I don't know how you can look at everything about it makes perfect sense to me. In Pogba's defence, I don't think he was signed to be a defensive midfielder. That's not his best position. If he is asked to play there, he's a magnificent player. But if he doesn't play there, then what we have for the first time in a long time is pressure on. But Pogba, we can't say pressure on Fernandes because Fernandes is, you can't drop him. He's been magnificent. But we have pressure on Pogba for the first time, and all the midfielders that they're not guaranteed to play. The one thing we saw against Sevilla in the semi-final and other games is that the squad was too thin. They can't change the game from the bench. That has to improve over the summer. They still need a couple more. And I honestly think that the most important signing for them this summer is a left-footed centre-back, because a right-footed centre-back comes inside with the ball and turns into traffic and turns into a congested midfield. And it hurts how United build and it hurts how they attack. So they could get away with not signing another right winger for a couple of months. They're going to have to do something because Gallo leaves in 3 months. But I think the most important signing for United to make next is the left-footed centre-back.
Phil, on that, do you think, on that midfield, actually to everyone, including the ones in the chat, is that one of the strongest midfields in the Premier League? And let's just say we're talking about the main three at the moment with Pogba, Bruno and Van de Beek, because I think that's one of the strongest midfields to start, but I am pushing them probably down a little bit when we look at a midfield as a whole and then include our backup or our subs, if we're going to say it. I'm still not convinced that if we bring somebody on, Fred, it's obviously not at the level of the others. So firstly, the main three, is that one of the strongest in the league? And then if you bring other midfield into it, do we then push ourselves back down?
Well, a couple of points. First of all, if you look at the Southampton game that United gave a goal away in the last minute of 6 minutes of injury time, when they brought the two midfielders on, both of them were completely different to Pogba and Fernandes, and neither of them could keep the ball. So United kept conceding possession and kept being put under pressure, and eventually conceded. And that illustrated a weakness that even that the quality of the players that they're bringing on is different. They're very different even to the players that we have on the pitch. So you can't play the same way. You can't play a possession-based game. That's a problem. So also when you look at the start of last season, there's no question what cost United last season was not signing midfielders. Because as soon as Pogba got injured, the midfield was threadbare. They couldn't play a certain way. It was inexplicable that United did not sign a midfielder and left Pogba as the only creative midfielder. And as we can see, these creative midfielders are fundamental to how Solskjær plays. So even if Pogba, who's never stayed fit for a whole season during his time at United, had have stayed fit, he would have needed to be rested. And the quality that's in behind him is just not good enough. So we're starting this season with a midfield of Pogba, Van de Beek and Fernandes. Last season, we started a midfield of McTominay, Fred and Pogba, totally different midfield. And also, as important as Bruno Fernandes was, Mason Greenwood's emergence with his goals is almost as important. We didn't have that at the start of last season, so now we've got a young striker that's had an 18-20 goal season, which is incredible. So we're starting the season much, much stronger than what we started last season, and there's no question. I agree with you, Megan. This is easily one of the best midfield in the league now.
Yeah, I think it's more about finding that balance in it. You've mentioned the ability of the players we've got now. We've got the quality. It's just more about fitting them all in, isn't it? Van de Beek was mentioned. He's not an out-and-out CDM. Bruno obviously is more of an attacking player as well, and it's a bit, how can we get the balance with them all in there? A lot of people are saying a diamond, but I don't have fond memories of us playing a diamond of late, to be honest. So I'd rather us have width. I think your fullbacks need to be outstanding, getting forwards and getting back to play that formation. And I don't think we can honestly say going forwards our fullbacks have been the most effective. So I think to do that we need to work on the fullbacks a lot. But you mentioned there Greenwood, obviously just got his debut. A massive congratulations for Greenwood getting his debut for England. You mentioned his goal scoring ability. He's just so clinical on both feet. And I always say I don't want to get overhyped. He's young and he's English and we know what happens. They get overhyped. But with Greenwood, it's hard to not get sucked in, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, people say the second season is the hardest, but I think that made sense maybe 30 years ago. Today, with scouting being almost forensic, you maybe are surprised the teams for the first 3-4 weeks. After that, you're not a surprise anymore. People will take you into consideration with scouting. So, really you get a couple of weeks of being an unknown, and then teams start taking you into consideration. So Mason Greenwood, for the last couple of months this season, will have been singled out by teams who will have game plans to nullify him because they know how dangerous he is, and he still overcomes that. There's a couple of things that impress me about him. How direct he is. First of all, as Gareth Southgate and everyone else has been saying, the fact he's two-footed. But when you look at a lot of his finishes, he scores a lot of goals from outside the box or close to inside the box with a lot of power on those shots. I'd suggest he has enormous confidence in his ability, because strikers that don't have confidence plays the ball because they're afraid. They're overly careful. They don't want to put their foot through the ball. Mason Greenwood has amazing confidence for a young kid. And that really is the biggest question mark, because ability gets you to a club like Manchester United. The question is, do you have the temperament to be able to deal with the pressure and the expectation we saw with Alexis Sanchez? He didn't. Bruno Fernandes, what sort of atmosphere did Bruno Fernandes come into? United were closer to the bottom three in points from the top three. When he came in, they had just lost to Burnley. They were a mess. And it didn't bother him. He saw himself as such an important player that he could change the atmosphere. And I think when we look at someone like Mason Greenwood, he's just it's the dream scenario for every academy to get someone like this into your first team that has this type of ability, and saved United maybe 70-80 million.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole, I know you're a big Greenwood fan like me. I mean, how good do you think he can be? And I know that seems like an impossible question to answer, but like you mentioned there, Phil, he just seems to take everything in his stride, doesn't he?
The sky's the limit for him. Like you say, I don't want to get too overhyped, but it's very, very difficult not to, because everything that he does, it's like with our young players now, I'd say in recent times, everything Greenwood does on the pitch excites me. And this isn't disrespectful to Rashford, but since lockdown, everything he does off the pitch excites me. So you're getting that balance of like brilliant people to look up to and brilliant on the pitch. Yeah, I think is unstoppable. The fact of how young he is and he takes everything in his stride. And also talking of that, I thought it was a little bit naughty that when he was having his first press conference, and it should be his moment, he was asked about Harry Maguire. And I just want to say well done to him, because he handled that like a man twice his age. And there was no need for that. That was his moment. And Greenwood deserves the accolade. That never should have been about Maguire. And I'm glad that he had his back, as we do as well.
Yeah, I agree. He was really professional in the way that he answered that. Andrew says Mason Greenwood is going to be a world-class player for us. Meg, do you think that? Can you class him as a world-class player? Possibly.
I don't think we can class him as world-class just yet, just because of the amount of time that he's had at the top level. I don't think that you can, he has played well, but it's only been for half a season, we need to remember. But I think he can become that. I also think that he has also, one second. Just wait, Ella.
Oh, bless.
He's made that position his own, and I think that's really an important thing for him. He could have just gone there to fill a gap for us, but he hasn't. He's made that into his position, and whether we bring Sancho in or not, does that automatically mean Greenwood's going to be dropped? Absolutely not. Sancho's not going to sit on the bench, but neither is Greenwood right now.
But that's what we want, isn't it? We want that healthy competition. Like you mentioned, we haven't had the quality off the bench. We want somebody who's going to push the players to the next level, and we haven't got that at the moment. So I agree. If Sancho comes in, it doesn't mean he walks straight in. But the thing with Greenwood as well that I like is he can switch with any three of those forward positions. You can put him out on the left-hand side, or he can obviously play centrally as well. He's very versatile in that sense, and that'll obviously go in his favour as well. George says I won't go that far with Greenwood. Let's give him time to develop. I completely agree. Like I mentioned, we overhype English players so much. I'm just so impressed with how he takes everything in his stride. He doesn't look phased by anything, and how clinical he is as well. You mentioned big goals that he scored. When we often needed a big goal in the game, Greenwood
this is his moment, and he would take it.
Because he was just so ruthless. He wouldn't hesitate, right or left foot. He'd just have a shot, and we know how clinical he is. It's just quality. United Way, he says 172 are watching. Let's get the likes to 150. Why not? Please hit that like button, guys. We'd appreciate it. But Phil, we've mentioned transfers. Obviously, we're linked with a fullback, I believe. Thiago, someone mentioned earlier. Thiago is a player that, I'll be honest, I've always wanted at United for years. I think he's a silky footballer. I think he's quality. Obviously, he's had his injury worries. He's not getting any younger. There's rumours that we're linked to it. Personally, I see him going to Liverpool. I don't think that will change. But can you see him come to United? Do you think there's any reality in that deal?
Sorry, was Thiago there? Well, I mean, look, if you listen to people like Jan Agafjord who said the only impediment to him coming is the wages, then that would imply that United have a very serious interest in him. And it would also imply, again, that once again, United are looking at defensive midfield role as more of someone as a playmaker in the defensive midfield rather than an out-and-out defensive midfield. So, but I can't see him coming unless United sell a player, because it's hard to see where he fits. Scott McTominay played as a centre-back for Scotland yesterday. So he could be used as an emergency centre-back. He's tall, he's very, very good player, but I don't think that's a long-term solution for him. I look at that midfield and I think there's been some rumours that possibly Fred is interested in clubs. To me, Fred, we've seen him improve a lot, but to me, he still lacks certain things that I need in a United midfielder. He's certainly not the player he was a year ago. He's much improved, but I still think the best Fred, just like I have the question marks about Luke Shaw, the best Luke Shaw. I've seen the best Fred. I've seen the best Luke Shaw. Are they good enough for United and a championship winning team? Thiago was no question would be an upgrade on Fred. So I think it's imperative United get at least 2 more deals done, and the impetus is the responsibilities on the recruitment team to make sure that happens, because anything less than that would be sending Solskjær into a season just like they did last season, completely ill-equipped to deal with what is ahead of them. I think they will get at least 2 more deals done, but I would like to see that, like I said, that centre back done quickly, because they also have a situation over the goalkeeping position. If Dean Henderson's back from De Gea, that's 2 new players in a back 4. That'll need time. So I would like to see them get that centre back deal come quickly. But of all the players that were being linked with the least, that's the position. But then Van de Beek came as a bit of a surprise. So maybe they're sitting on something that they're not telling people. Obviously, Upamecano was someone that we would like. But if you look at world football, there's not a lot of obvious centre-backs out there that can come in, because, we're talking about Varane and Koulibaly. We've seen both of them in the Champions League this season. They were not great. Chris Smalling went to Italy and became, was in Team of the Year in Italy. So there isn't a lot of obvious options out there. But it is something they need to move on. But Thiago, I can only see him coming if there's a midfielder on the way out.
Yeah. In terms of centre-backs, you literally hit the nail on the head. I mentioned this the other day, that in terms of centre-back options, realistic options, there's not a lot of quality out there. Is there quality out there that's going to improve us? There's not a lot. Upamecano, you mentioned, he would obviously be the one that I would love to sign, but he's just got a new deal. Leipzig don't need to sell after getting money for the Werner deal. So it's one of them. I mean, Nicole, would you agree with Phil that you think we need a left-footed centre-back? And again, can you see any realistic options out there for us?
No, just pretty much repeating what he's saying, really, because I think we were just discussing with Zara, was it a few weeks ago? I can't keep up with this year, and she was saying she would pretty much. I think me and Meg were saying we need quality in that position, and Zara was just saying we just need someone to come and fit in. But I don't think it's like that anymore. I think obviously with everything that's going on this year, and they have to be up to a standard. And I think Ole now has got his picture, and he's only bringing, I think that what this has been showing, he's only bringing in players that could really improve the squad, but also fit into the squad. Like when Fernandes came in, he invigorated everyone else. That kind of player. I think we need more leaders and more personalities as well as on the pitch as well. Can I just ask Phil as well, like in regards to the club, because I don't know if you girls seen it and people in the chat seen it, seen his email from Manchester United, and just wanted to ask you about your connections to the club and how they feel about you sometimes talking out against the Glazers and how it is run.
Look, I've got a good relationship been there for a long time. I've been promoting tours for them out here in the States for a long time. I've had, the previous communications director that was there, Phil Townsend, is a very, very good friend of mine. Phil's someone I speak to a lot. He's over at UEFA now. Charlie Brooks was taking over that position. Charlie is a fantastic guy. And it's odd to me that people think that somehow talking to Manchester United is communicating with the Queen. It's not difficult to do. And, obviously they know who I am. They know what I am. They know that I have certain views about the owners. But I don't go after any of them personally. I don't go after any of the people that work at United personally. I think that's wrong. I think you can have professional criticism. They know what I feel about my vision of what United should be and how they should be owned. I will never in a million years be convinced taking $1.5 billion for this football club is in its best interest. But they're quite good to me, to be fair. Nicola's on that email, that was just one small snippet of what they actually sent me. It was long email, but as I've said before, I wouldn't release anything without their approval because I think that is completely unethical, and I think United have to have the ability to communicate with me in a way that not everything is going to get released. Not everything has to be on the record. They have honest communications with me, and to be honest, I'm quite fortunate because it would mean nothing to them. It would have no consequence or cost to them to not talk to me, but they do, and I'm quite fortunate to have that relationship, and I respect them for it, and I'm grateful.
It's amazing, the relationship that you have. You mentioned there about how the club is run, and obviously we can all have our own criticisms, but I completely agree. And it's like when you see fans obviously scapegoating or going mad at players, and like you mentioned, you can criticise, but I completely disagree with the abuse, and we forget that they're human at the end of the day. I don't agree with that. Of course, you can criticise, and we're purely talking about football here, but beyond football, they're still a human being. And it's like the whole, we mentioned this a few weeks back, but the Twitter, obviously, they tweeted something about Phil Jones, some kind of comment, didn't they? And obviously, United reacted badly to that, rightly so. But it's that kind of, it's still a human at the end of the day. Whether you like Phil Jones as a player or not, he's still a human being. And I think it's about being respectful in how you voice those opinions. And that's why we love football, because everyone has opinions, and obviously not everybody agrees. Well, that's why we love it. And I think it's just about voicing that in the right way, isn't it? And I know, Phil, you've done a massive push for mental health awareness. Yeah. That's something that we feel really passionately about on here. Obviously, we've had a lot of trolls, as I'm sure you have, and I'm sure many people experience, and it's not nice. But how do you overcome that? I mean, what advice would you give to people who are suffering, and also, how would you face trolls?
Well, first of all, what I would say to anyone out there suffering is you're not alone. There's lots of people that are exactly like you, and there is no one who's perfect. There's no one who lives a perfect life. We all have struggles, and I've had plenty of them. And obviously, trolls are there, and the bigger you become, the more you're going to attract. And I think it often says more about them than it does about you. If someone's attacking you, the type of people that attack people over a football opinion really are people that are illustrating their own issue. Because I've never felt compelled to go after anyone because I've got a different football opinion than them, to attack them personally or to attack them in any way that is really condescending. And like I said earlier in the show, some of the stuff that women have to put up with from fellas is just absolutely despicable. And I often wonder, do they not have sisters, do they not have mothers, do they not have wives, girlfriends themselves? I mean, it just is such a sad indictment on society today that Twitter has allowed this to happen, where people vent this. And I think you just have to accept that it's part of life, it's part of the game. It really, when I mean part of the game, I mean it's part of the game of life. That you've seen someone like Greta Thunberg, who's 16, getting abused from grown men. It really is pathetic. And I've got it. I've had people threaten my life over a football opinion, which is just insanity. And I've said to them, like, do you realize how unhinged that makes you look, that you would threaten someone's life over a football opinion? It says everything about you and nothing about me. So, I think it's despicable, and I think it's really sad, and it's always going to be there. I have to say, though, the overwhelming response to me on Twitter is positive, to be fair, and I try to be as positive as I can with everybody else and try to be available to people who are struggling. But it's just sadly something that as you get a bigger and bigger following, you're gonna attract this, and you have to. I just mute conversations because, for example, there's certain things that we get told that I won't tweet because I know that the response to it, if it contradicts something like Fabrizio Romano, for example, is just going to be negative and toxic, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather just not say anything. And there's nothing against Fabrizio, but it just is the way of this fandom on Twitter where they worship somebody, and anyone that contradicts them, they feel entitled to say things that are just despicable. And but that's the way it is, and I sincerely hope girls get it far worse than men, and I think it's appalling. But yeah, all we can do is be there for each other and out these people and make sure that we don't accept it. Like I said about Jesse Lingard, it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that it never happens again to another footballer, because I can't imagine what it must be like for that guy's family to read that stuff. And anytime he tweets anything, it is just a deluge of responses of the most disgracefully toxic stuff. And people think it's justified because he says he's a shit footballer. How dare you? This is a guy that played for Manchester United, played for his country in a World Cup, and you sitting behind your computer, 30 pounds overweight, never done anything in your life, telling Jesse Lingard what? It's
crazy. Like you mentioned, he had his own issues going off the field. He didn't perform on the field, and I'm sure he'd openly hold his hands up and say I wasn't as good as I should be. I've underperformed, but he's a human being, and his mum being ill, and it's going to take its toll, isn't it? Nicole, what's your thoughts on the abuse that you see fans giving? I know you're very much like me. I know, for example, Maguire and what was happening recently. I know you stood by him, for example. Yeah. What words do you have for trolls? Because obviously, on a daily basis, we're discussing in our WhatsApp group some of the disgusting comments we've had thrown at us in the day, and it happens quite often. Luckily, we're the type of people. It's like
so.
But what would you say?
I would just say, I've said it before, like pretty much reiterate what Phil's just said, is that the problem doesn't lie with you, it lies with them. I am one of the nicest people, not 24/7, but like pretty much anyone that I'll speak to will go, and you help me, Nicole, thank you, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll get one person, I could put, my name is Nicole, I've got red lipstick on, and someone would be like, nah, you've not, that's a lie. So what I'm saying is someone's always going to disagree with you, but be authentic, be yourself. And in regards to like when you get, I get it a lot, and like you would say, I'm not on any level near Jesse Lingard, obviously I'm just me, but when I get comments, it's not that it's going to bother me, it's like I have to tell my mum, or if my mum or my dad watch a video, I have to say, oh, don't look at that. And I've got the kids like that. You've seen that picture that Brooke drew, so of like ladies in red. How am I supposed to explain to like my 7-year-old daughter who loves football and she like wants to be like mummy when she grows up, why people are saying this about it? It's unacceptable. We shouldn't have to accept it, but unfortunately we do. But I think the way forward is just to mute the negativity out your life. Talk to people when you're feeling low. Like me and the girls have always got each other. And keep at it, because if someone's hating on you for something, then you are doing something right.
Look, I've had to deal with my 13-year-old son, going on Twitter and looking at people tweeting about being happy his mother's dead. How do I explain that to my child? That he looks at me and goes, why would somebody say that? And imagine how hurtful that is for him, who doesn't have the emotional maturity to deal with it. And sorry, it's just people don't realize the impact of this stuff. And, it's not always falling on an adult's eyes and ears. Sometimes it's a child, and it's very, very difficult for them.
Yeah, I agree. George has asked you a good question, Phil. I've just requested the chat to throw any questions your way, and said, what are your expectations for what we will achieve in the upcoming season in terms of trophies and league position? If you were Ollie, realistically, I'm guessing it's based on now before we've got the transfers in that we could possibly get. Looking at it now, if you're Ollie, what would you say an aim or an objective should be?
I think it all depends on what happens by the end of the window. If Solskjær gets another 2 players, he has to be judged. This to me is a season where he's not playing with house money anymore. This to me is a season where you can't say he needs another window. You can't say he needs any more time. You can't say that there's any other external reasons. So for me, top 4 has to be a guarantee. It should not be a question going into the last few games this season. He has to be within at least 10 points of Liverpool or City if they're the top 2. I think there's a very, very interesting story developing with Liverpool and the fact that 23 of the first team squad are allegedly asthmatic, and they, of course, that licensed them to take stimulants. And this is a very interesting story. So I will have to see its veracity, but if that's true, there's very, very interesting implications on that. I think for Solskjær, he has to win a trophy next season. You can't be Manchester United manager and not win trophies. And his legacy is...
We need more than a semi.
What's that?
I said we need more than a semi. I've had enough.
Well, it's been a while since I had one of those. It's for him, he has to win a trophy. And I think that every Manchester United manager is going to be judged by that. And United cannot become a club that's happy with top four. But it's imperative that he gets the support that he needs to deliver that. So it all depends on whether he gets the players he needs. If he gets another 2 players this summer, then to me it has to be at least top 4 in a trophy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I said it when I was asked that same question. I said top 3 because obviously we got 3rd last season. But for me, it's all about closing the gap between the top 2 and us, because it's been far too big. And gradually, I think we are seeing progression, that we're closing that gap. We're going in the right direction, and I think we need to close that again. But we know the battle for top 4 isn't going to be a pushover like it was this season. Every team bottling it. Nobody wanted that top 4 spot, and I think next season is going to be very different. We've seen how Chelsea have strengthened. We still expect Spurs to do business, and I think it's going to be a tight one. And like I say, I don't want us to fall further behind. I still feel we are 3 players away. We need to invest more. And I'm like you, I'm hopeful that we will. I always say don't get sucked in until you see them holding the shirt up. Nicole knows I say that every single show, because I know how it feels to see rumour after rumour. It's frustrating and it is mentally draining. So I'll wait until I see shirts being held up, but I'm pretty sure we'll still get 1 or maybe even 2 deals. And I'm hoping Sancho will be one of them. But in terms of next season, you mentioned the trophy. Ole Gunnar Solskjær, a lot of people, obviously, he's mixed Ole in, Ole out. I'm guessing that you are firmly Ole in. Obviously, I see your tweets and I've seen a few of your videos as well. You're firmly Ole in. But what would you say to the people who are Ole out? Can you understand that?
No, because there's a very weird modern proclivity today of people to fanboy managers. And I really don't understand that. Personally, I couldn't care if Benny Hill's the manager of Man United as long as they're winning and they're playing a certain way. But they're usually the people who are all out of Mourinho avatars, and I really don't understand why they just don't go and support Spurs. You know, Solskjær's had a very difficult job. He hasn't been perfect. The club haven't been perfect. But the difference between United today, and I know you can point to 66 points, but it depends how you break down the season. United today versus the Mourinho, the contrast is massive. First of all, there's a United I want to watch every week. It's a United team that excites me. The Mourinho team had a Bruno Fernandes, it had a Mason Greenwood, it had Martial in this type of form. It's a United team that attacks, that play on the front foot, they buy technical players to play a certain way. When Mourinho bought players to play a certain way to kill games, and it was all about the result. And to me, football is about much more than a result. It's about, otherwise just watch it in teletext. It's about the entertainment. For me, I think Solskjær, what he's done with United in terms of restoring an identity back to the top, not just the first team, the under 23s, which got promoted last season, all the way down from under 18s. That now we see kids coming through the academy. Now we see United go out and strengthen an academy. Now we see a vision that goes beyond the first team, because it's all organic. It can't just be focused on the first team. You see the clubs like Bayern Munich that have a mold from the top down. And it's no coincidence that they can take kids almost surgically from their youth team and put them into the first team, and they succeed because they play the same way, the philosophy's the same way throughout. So Solskjær's done so much on that side. He's also done something with the atmosphere inside the football club. You heard Sanchez talk about this under Mourinho. It's very difficult to change a working environment at any place, whether it's in the office or a football and dressing room. He's done that. And you saw Bruno Fernandes now, with the likes of those players coming in, if you stand out for the wrong reasons at United, you're gonna get singled out. You're gonna get pushed out. If you're an individual that doesn't care about the team, you're gonna get singled out. So back then under Sanchez, it was all about individuals. It was all about people playing for themselves. That's not the case anymore. So I think he's done a fantastic job. And truthfully, since he's brought Fernandes in, since January, he's been the most consistent manager in the league. So he's done enough for me to be. I mean, it's a miracle that he got top 4. He's done enough for me to justify being in that position. That being said, I think it is important that next season he shows continued progress, and he continues to bring it forward and win a trophy next season.
Yeah, I agree, and I think in terms of Ollie, the whole atmosphere around the club, Bruno coming in has helped that as well. But it's been lifted, like I say, it felt for a while that we've kind of been spiraling, not on the right path. Everything seems negative, and I think Ollie coming in and, like I say, Bruno coming in, be lifting again. But United Central Saeed is in the chat. Make sure you go and subscribe to United Central. Massive, obviously a massive channel now, Saeed. I'm saying, because you're growing and growing, doing ever so well. But a good friend of mine as well. He is really confident, and where he's got this from, I do not know. But he's very confident that there's going to be 2 signings in the next 8 to 9 days. Saeed, I hope you are spot on with that. If you're not right, then we could fall out. I mean, Nicole, do you believe Saeed there? Do you trust him?
I believe it. I trust him. He's a decent guy, but I believe it when I see it. I'm not getting sucked in. This year's done me dirty. I'm not getting sucked in. I'm staying zen.
The sensible thing to do, definitely. But in terms of Nicole, in terms of your question for Phil, I think this would be a good time to ask, because you mentioned about the United play and the way that we're playing football, and I think this would be a good time. And I think it's a good question, to be fair, Phil. She's going to put you on the spot a little bit, but it's not an answer.
Just a little bit. Every guest that we're going to have on our show, we're going to ask him this same question, and that question is, what does Manchester United mean to you?
It's very, very difficult to put a point on that, because it's like describing love. You just never quite manage to do it. Manchester United mean, when you consider what I grew up in Belfast, right, which was just madness, violence, the worst type of insanity. United were a dream to me. They represented happiness. They represented optimism. They represented something that lifted me temporarily out of the environment that I was in. It gave me something to believe in, gave me something to dream that it could do. And so as it's changed over time. So as I was a child, United was someone that gave me tremendous optimism that my experience wasn't going to last forever, and that there was something that was realistic to me. They were entertainment to me, and they were a complete obsession as a child, and then as I grew and I aged, that changed. And so the love has always remained. And we saw during the pandemic, when they weren't playing, just how much they meant to lots of people in their mental health, and how badly we missed it, and how it leaves a void in your life that very few other things can fill. This is why I empathize with people who don't boycott the Glazers, because I totally understand it's very, very difficult to fill that with something else. And love can't be turned on and off. It's either there or it's not. And so for me, it's something that I have a deep love affair with, and that's why I write the things that I do about the Glazers, because I can't be given things to change my views. I can't be given access. I can't be given, if I give you this, change your view. My love of United is something that I care so deeply about, the well-being of the football club and the outcome beyond the team. Some people support a team. I support a club. People who sit in front of the TV on a Saturday or Sunday and watch United play and have no concern beyond that. People who support a team. I support a football club. I support the first team, the under teams, the women, everything connected with the football club.
Love that. I think that's a very good answer, Nicole. You satisfied with that answer?
I'm satisfied.
George says United is like the faithful friend that is always there for you when the rest of your life has its ups and downs. It's true. I mean, you mentioned lockdown and having no football. And a lot of people, of course, now you still can't go into Old Trafford, and the amount of people are missing it. I certainly miss it. But even football coming back without the fans, I know it's nothing like obviously with the fans, but just seeing United playing again, even the pictures when they were back in training on that first day, the mood on Twitter, everything was a bit more positive. Everyone was excited. It's more than just a sport, isn't it, football? For a lot of people, we mentioned mental health. It is definitely more than a sport. And I'm just excited.
Together, it's also community where like this type of stuff happens, where it brings a lot of us together from other parts of the world that otherwise we would never come into communication with. So, there's a United family, I suppose, of people. There's United Twitter where we all see the same people. We all see the same accounts, same tweets, same everything. And it's brought us together as a family. And I've got a lot of friends from people that I otherwise would never have met. So that is another big benefit to it.
Definitely. My last question before we head off is, who is your favourite United player currently?
It's a really I don't know. I don't know if I have one single favourite. I have to say, since Bruno Fernandes has come into the club, he's completely changed my experience of watching United, and I love what he's brought to the football club. But I love what Mason Greenwood is. I love what he represents, that raw youth of just a total personification of what Manchester United are. So I know that Marcus Rashford takes a lot of grief, but what Marcus Rashford has done off the pitch has been incredible. He's also had to play through injuries for the last 2 seasons, which is another reason why United need to sign another player up front. So it depends. I don't know if I have one single player, but it's the last 6 months, would have to say Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit like, I've got Rashford on the back of my shirt for more than one reason, like Nicole mentioned earlier, for what he's done off the pitch this season as well. I think he's been superb, and he's still doing it right now. But yeah, I agree with you. I think injuries are a concern. I think he came back too soon from his injury after lockdown. I don't think he seemed quite up to scratch, did he? And I did feel from it seemed like maybe it's mentally, I don't know what it is, but he didn't seem 100%. And I'm hoping this rest now and this break, I think him pulling out of the England squad was good for him.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that this rest will do him justice. But Nicole, if I was to ask you the same question, your favourite player, could you name?
How indecisive I am. Just one.
Yeah, if you can.
As of this very moment right now, I'd say Fernandes, but I've got a proper soft spot for Tony Martial, because whenever I'm down, I just imagine that day at Old Trafford when he came on and scored against Liverpool.
Yeah, it's Tony's smile as well, isn't it? Whenever you feel down,
when he's happy, I'm happy, because when he's on a mad one, you know about it. But yeah, obviously right now Fernandes, but where my heart lies, I'd probably go a bit different and go Tony M. I do love him. I do love his spirit. Yeah,
and he's had a fantastic season last season, and I'm hoping he can go from strength to strength.
Yeah.
If he gets Sancho, I think that'll really aid him as well. But Phil, I want to say a massive thank you for jumping on Ladies in Red.
Anytime at all. Thank you so much for having me, and absolute pleasure. And keep up the great work. You guys are doing fantastic stuff.
Appreciate that, Phil. And if you want to shout out your channel as well, and obviously your Twitter, so people can go and give you a follow.
You can catch me at Malachians. People ask me what that is, my football team when I played back in Ireland. And Beyond the Pitch, at Beyond the Pitch, which is where my podcast can be found. So, thank you so much for having me, ladies.
An absolute pleasure, and make sure you go and check out Phil's podcast as well. Superb content on there. You mentioned you have some amazing guests, even people like Nicole. I mean, come on, guys.
I have to get you on next show. I have to get you on.
Go on, Arso.
I would love to have you on. So, be my pleasure. So, you're on my guest list. So I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, anytime, Phil. Absolute pleasure. Nicole, if you just want to give people a shout out as well and let them know where they can find you.
Right there. I actually got the right hand. Twitter and Instagram. There you go. And my latest write-up is always pinned tweet.
Love that. Yeah, Nicole is a fantastic writer. Definitely check it out.
Thanks, Soph. And Real Ladies in Red. We're near to, what are we on to, Soph? Is the next
nearly 4K.
We're nearly at 4K. RM has got a shirt waiting to be posted. So get onto that. And then that'll be posted out once we reach 4K.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody in the chat. I really appreciate it. Obviously, apologies that Meg had to dart off. The kids were on a mad one today. Bless her. She still tried to go ahead, but yeah, bless her. She's still in the chat somewhere, I believe. But yeah, thank you to everybody in the chat.
I love you, Emma, as well, because Emma's here.
Yeah, and if you are new, hit the sub button. Emma is in the chat. That United family, go and subscribe there. Emma will be back tomorrow as well. She just couldn't make it tonight. But guys, if you're new, hit the sub button. Drop a like on the video. Drop a like for Phil. He's been a fantastic guest. And of course, if you've missed you in the chat, drop a comment afterwards and we'll respond to you all there. All that's left to say is have a lovely rest of your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Take care.